Hi, friends. This is Dr. Arpita Gupta Dipalma, and you're listening to my podcast, From Pissed Off to Poised. This show is for busy women physicians and professionals just like you who are ready to take control of their emotions while learning how to excel in juggling all the things they are responsible for in life. It's for overextended mamas who are trying to figure out how to work smarter, not harder. It's for multitasking women who are tired of playing the role of the angry and resentful air traffic controller, who simply want to learn how to create a life that is more calm, intentional, and joyful for themselves. My goal is to help you learn how to eliminate the overwhelm and maintain your composure in high-stress situations that you face with the demands in your day-to-day life. Because I get you guys, this was totally me. You are not alone. I invite you to embark on your journey of transformation with me. Enjoy the listen. Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of From Pissed Off to Poised. Today, I am excited to talk about this subject because I will admit, quite frankly, it wasn't a topic that I really liked to talk about when I was going through it. And the power of doing this work and the power of, quite frankly, coaching really has the ability to trickle down into all different aspects within our life. And for me, as I mentioned when we started this podcast, my main incentive for doing this work for myself was to really improve the relations that I had with my children, most specifically my daughter, so that they would want to spend time with me and with us as they got older. But one of the other areas where this work really impacted me and my relationships is that with my spouse, where we were noticing that, yes, there was a lot of reactionary tendencies, a lot of anger and frustration that we would kind of take out on each other. And it really was totally misdirected. We weren't always upset and irritated with each other. Yeah, sometimes we definitely were, but not always. But unfortunately, the brunt of it would land on each other as our outlet. So I want to really dive in this episode to talk about building that connection back with your life partner. And I ask in advance for grace and forgiveness if I say spouse or husband throughout this episode, but this really applies to any significant other that you have in your life, any life partner. And that's what I want to talk about with you today. And so I want to start with just mentioning, like, if we've ever noticed, or if you've ever noticed when your partner is on edge, you can feel it in the air that the tension is there, maybe even feel the temperature in the environment be very, very uncomfortable. And a lot of times we don't really want to acknowledge it. We don't believe it to be true. We question whether or not our intuition or our instinct is on point. But I want to offer that you're not imagining it. Research shows that one person's heart rhythm actually can show up in another person's brainwave pattern when they're close to each other. And that sounds totally wild to me that we're becoming in tune within our bodies to another person's energetic field. But according to heart math, which I've mentioned before, the energy that your heart generates radiates outside of our bodies. And it's not just energy, it's the carrying pattern of our emotional states. So if we're stressed, the people around us can feel that. And so there's also good news with this because when our heart rhythm is calm and coherent, those around you can pick up on that sense of ease as well. So it starts with awareness, as I've always talked about from day one. So I want to dive in a little bit deeper here. Let's start by talking about what sets you off at home. I want you to take another inventory here. I know we've done inventory for general activators for your anger, but I want you to do another list that specifically focuses on what pushes your buttons at home and how it's related to your partner specifically. Do you find yourself when you've come home from a long day at work that you've had maybe some issues come up or it's been very stressful, that you tend to use your partner as your outlet where they kind of get the brunt of it? Are you unknowingly substituting this intensity of conversations and interactions with them for intimacy? If anger wasn't a part of your interactions with your spouse when you got home or at any point in your week with them, what would you find underneath the anger? More often than not, anger is just a mask for something deeper, usually pain. And again, we've talked about this before. And it's this pain that causes us to show up in a way that we think and believe to be protective. But unfortunately, this behavior is what wreaks havoc on the relationship. So, I want to break down some simple strategies to help you and your partner begin to maybe build awareness and connect on a deeper level. And the first thing I will say is when I started doing this work with my husband and to build our relationship, I knew that I was going to make some changes. And we already had this sort of interaction, this dialogue that could become activating, could be perceived as passive aggressive with each other that would set each other off. So I had to be really vulnerable and find a time where neither of us was in a pain body, which I'll describe in detail in a minute, but neither of us was in a funky state or an activated, angry place. And I sat down with him and I said, listen, I'm doing some work on myself. I realize that I am angry a lot and I take it out on the people in my world around me who I care about the most. And so, what I'm going to do now is really start to be reflective on how I'm showing up. And one of the things I've noticed is that when I'm activated or when I'm set off and angry, I show up in ways that I don't find to be productive for myself and for the people in my world. And so, what I might do is when I notice myself getting there, getting activated or upset, I'm going to step away. And I want you to know that I'm not doing this from a place of being passive aggressive. I'm doing this from a place of love because I want to do this work for our sakes. And that was a game changer because immediately it removed the presumption that any behavior that I was doing was there to, quite frankly, piss him off or poke the bear or be passive aggressive. And so consider that as the first step, having an open, honest, vulnerable conversation with your partner that you're starting to do some work on how you show up. And it might look different. And by all means, your intent is not to be more activating or passive aggressive. All right. So here are some strategies that I have found to work for me when I interact with my partner. And I hope that you find some of them to be impactful and powerful for you. Take what resonates for you and leave what doesn't. This is not an all or none thing. This is not something where you want to take all these strategies and start working on them all at once right away. You really want to figure out what is applicable, believable, and easily doable and implementable for you. All right. So, number one, the first thing that I realized is that I had a crap ton of expectations, and a lot of them weren't realistic. We all have expectations, but the biggest thing that I realized is that I very rarely actually voice them to my partner. Okay. He had to be showing up in a certain way, he had to be doing all the things, he had to be able to read my mind because I wasn't really telling him what my expectations were. And mind you, some of my expectations, as you can imagine, weren't realistic. So the key here is setting ourselves up for success by communicating our needs ahead of time. And I'm the first person to tell you that we are the only person that can meet our own needs. So when we have expectations that other people have to behave a certain way in order to make us feel good or be happy, we're setting ourselves up for failure. So, what I'm speaking about here is with regards to being in a partnership where there are expectations that need to be met. And that's where we need to create this want match per se. So, let me give you some examples. What I found happening oftentimes when the kids were little is that I would have ideas of things that I needed to complete or get done over the weekend. And my husband, very much so, had the same ideas. He wanted to watch football for a couple hours in the fall on Sundays. He wanted to go run some errands and do his things. He wanted to advance his knowledge base in certain areas of medicine. I wanted to go out with my girls for like a birthday party or just a night out. I wanted to go shopping and just be outside in the sun. So what would happen is we would not communicate what our wants were for each other. And we had these little minions running around that also needed to be taken to all their activities and the birthday parties and their sports events and just needed to be actually mommied and daddied because they weren't old enough to take care of themselves. And so we began to assume that the other person would be able to do the babysitting in a sense while we were doing the activities we wanted to do. And as you can imagine, there was conflict, there was tension because, oh, I thought you were going to have the kids because I was planning on doing this. And so we had these expectations, unsaid expectations, that the other person would know what we were going to do, what we needed them to do, so that we could take care of the things that we had in our life, in our plans. And that was leading to a lot of tension and a lot of disagreement because obviously the communication sucked. So, what we started doing, and this is something that I'm going to talk about when we get into the time management portion of the podcast in a couple more weeks. But what I really started to do is when I planned out my calendar for the week ahead on Thursdays, I would then sit down with my husband and ask him, what things do you want to get accomplished this weekend? What do you have on your schedule and on your plan? And I would do the same. And then we'd figure out what areas of overlap there were, where there would be any problems that would prevent those things from happening, and then work together to resolve them, to make it so that we both were able to accomplish things that we were wanting to accomplish over the weekend while having open communication. It led to so much more peace amongst ourselves. And so this is something that I would highly suggest that you do with your partner. Create a little bit of space and time to discuss what the expectations are, not even just over the weekends. Do this for when you're going on vacations. Do this when you have chores that need to be completed regularly at the house. Figure out what the want match is. A want match is when you look at what your wants are about some area in your life and you talk about what their wants are, and you figure out how to make it kind of blend and mesh, kind of like interlacing fingers while you're holding hands. Figure out the want match so that your communication is much more clear and in a way that you're able to meet each other's expectations. Because when you're in a partnership, there are going to be expectations. The key is voicing them and making them clearly communicated. Okay, so that's the first one. That's a big one. So I spent a little bit of time on that. Second strategy is really stop taking your partner's actions to be a personal attack on you. And I used to do this all the time. I would find myself thinking, I did this and I do all of these things, so they should be doing those things, right? So I took out the trash, so he should be doing some other part of household chores because that's what should be happening. It should be a division of labor. Another area that I would find myself perseverating on is thoughts such as like, he didn't help with the kids, so he clearly doesn't respect all the things I do. And so when we start making our partner's actions or inactions an attack on us, it sends us down this kind of frustrated, resentful, anger spiral. And this is really important for us to catch because we are humans that seek confirmation bias. So when we notice something hasn't happened in a certain way, we start looking for all the other things that are kind of confirming that this person is behaving in a way that we don't like. They're also, look, he didn't take out the trash and he didn't drive the kids to school and he didn't buy me my favorite chocolates for Valentine's Day. Like it goes into this spiral where we're just constantly looking at all the negative things that they're doing. So I want you to consider instead if you could approach your partner like a cute, adorable little puppy. Like they are there simply for you to love with no strings attached, no expectations. If we could show up this way, kind of like when we did when we first met this individual and we were so like in love and it was just amazing. All we want for them to do is to show up as who they were because we love them so much. And sometimes it's hard to think about that now, especially when we've gotten so into our current ways. So I want you to think about them like a puppy or a kitten. I don't like cats, but if you guys like cats, go for it, right? So a little puppy, they can do anything wrong. They can poop in the house, they can pee in the house, but inevitably all we do is love on them and just cuddle with them and snuggle with them because we just want to love them. It feels so good. So I want you to consider, could you do that with your husband or your partner or your wife instead? Okay, what would change if you showed up that way and stop making their actions be a personal attack on you? All right, strategy number 3, letting the mind reading go. All right, and this goes back to the expectations again, but I would find myself saying, okay, it's my birthday. He should know that I want to go to this restaurant. He should know that I really love and have been wanting this purse, and he should go buy this for me. And what happens when we have this expectation that they should be able to read our minds because they've known us for so long is that we're setting ourselves up for disappointment and resentment. And again, It's not an attack on us if they don't do exactly what we're expecting them to do, because they honestly might be totally clueless if you haven't verbalized the expectations. So I want to offer, what's the harm in just doing the things that you want for yourself, right? What's the harm in buying yourself that purse that you've wanted? What's the harm in booking the reservation at the restaurant that you want to go to for your birthday? If you can start to recognize that you are the only person that's going to be able to meet the needs that you want, it's a game changer. And it's not to say that they can't still do nice things for you, but can we start to view the nice things that are done for us by other people as an added bonus? It's an amazing topping to what we've already created to ensure that we are happy and meeting our own expectations. All right, strategy number 4 are the mirror neurons, right? Have you ever noticed that when your partner's angry, you suddenly get all pissed off and angry too, even if you're not really overall impacted or affected by the situation that's pissed them off? These are our mirror neurons. So if we can just even have awareness around having mirror neurons, it is a total game changer. Plan to handle these moments calmly. When we can plan in advance, okay, I know when he's pissed off that I tend to get pissed off. This is where that talking in advance with your partner is key, where you say, hey, remember what I talked about? I'm doing some work on myself, and I know and I can tell that when you're angry, I automatically get angry. So I'm going to give myself some space in that situation, and I love you. Or maybe you would plan in advance with, I've noticed that when you get angry, it automatically makes me angry because I care so much. So help me understand what you need in that time so that you aren't further activated. Again, it goes back to communication, but when you have awareness around mirror neurons and how they show up for you and your partner, it can be completely life-changing when you start to give yourself some space around that. Strategy number 5, talking about respect. Okay. And this was a big one for me because when I left practice as a physician, I went in and became more of an administrator in my husband's practice to help run it. And I founded this practice with him, right? So I had an equal kind of vesting in the success of this place. And what happened was, what I would find when we would interact in the office in a professional level, and I would offer my suggestions or offer my input for what I believe needed to be done, if he didn't take them or if he interrupted me in the middle of explaining what I thought we should do, my thought would jump to, he does not respect me. And so that would ultimately lead me to behave in a way where I did not respect myself. I would walk out of the room, I would raise my voice, I would say snarky comments to him. And if I reflected back, I realized I would never do any of those things or behave in that way with anybody else. And I was not respecting the way I was showing up. So when I focused on this and I really did some work, I realized that this thought that he doesn't respect me or doesn't value what I bring to the table was simply a story that I had created for myself. But the story was causing me so much anguish and so much unhappiness and resentment that it was impacting how I was showing up in a way that I didn't respect myself. So I could quickly go back to realize that in my heart, I knew he truly does respect me. He truly does value everything I bring to the table. This was just my shitty brain creating a story that was a little bit more dramatic and exciting to believe in that heat of the moment. It gave me some sense of control when I felt like I did not have any. So I want you to ask yourself, is it worth the cost of the connection and intimacy in your relationship to continue to go down these thought error patterns? Respect starts with you. So, how can you behave in a way where you know that you are respecting and honoring yourself and your values? Strategy number 6, we're going to change the dance. I always like to say that relationships are kind of like a dance. And so, when you start to change your steps, your partner will eventually begin to change theirs too. It's kind of like going from the tango to the waltz, right? Somebody has to make the first move. And in our relationship, when I began this work for myself with coaching, it was me. So I started making the first move. I took the lead in the dance, and gradually my husband started to move with me. He started to shift to the way I was dancing as well. But this all took the effort and the energy, and most importantly, my ability to be vulnerable with him. Okay, I had to realize that my inability to be vulnerable with my husband, the person who was the closest to me, the person who I cared about the most, was costing me our intimacy and our connection. So, is there a way that you can tap into that so that you can start to build the connection with your spouse and they can start shifting from the tango to the waltz with you? Strategy number 7 is the pain body. And I mentioned this at the very beginning of this show. A pain body is referenced by Eckhart Tolle, and he talks about when we're stuck in this low energy state or we're kind of in a funk where we really sometimes may not even recognize that we're fully in it, and we really can't help ourselves when we get in it. And so there are times when we ourselves are stuck in a pain body, and when we might notice that our partner is also maybe stuck in a pain body. In these moments, it's often really hard for us to not poke the bear, per se. Have you ever noticed that when your husband is in a funk or when they're just kind of, not their best selves or they're having a bad day, that we tend to poke at it? What's going on? What's wrong? Why aren't you talking to me? Right? We think that if we insert ourselves this way, that it's going to maybe allow them to open up and talk to us. But in actuality, if you think about when you're in a funk in a pain body, a lot of times you just want to be left alone. So, in these times, when you notice that your partner's in a funk, can you resist the urge to poke the bear? And instead, when they're in this space, let them be. And again, having a discussion in advance that I notice that when you're in a funk and a pain body, and I try to talk to you or get you to open up or make it better, it actually makes it worse. So, what do you need in this moment when I notice this? Should I just leave you alone? And I want you to know that it's all coming from love. Strategy number 8 is basic conflict resolution and being vulnerable with your heart. When you're talking to your partner, I want you to think about and settle into coming from your heart, really diving in deep to recognize the emotions that you're having and to feel that empathy towards them, to be truly vulnerable, both when you're speaking and when you're listening to them speak. So instead of quickly reacting or responding or trying to counter what they're saying to you when you're having this connection, I want you to instead intentionally focus on listening deeply to what they're saying. And here's a little exercise that I want you to maybe consider using for when you need to have these difficult conversations. All right. Let's say you've had an argument or you're in a situation or a scenario where both of you think that you're right. I want you to just notice that you're coming from that space and then settle into your heart and decide that you instead want to show up with love and vulnerability. Okay. I want you to ask them in that moment to tell you why they're right. All right. I hear what you're saying. I want you to tell me why you're right in this situation. And as they begin to speak, I want you to really listen. I don't want you to think about what's the next thing you're going to say or how you're going to counter what they're saying. I want you to simply give yourself permission to listen to what they're saying. You don't get a turn here. You don't get to give your reason for why you're right. You just get to listen. After they've told you why they're right, I want you and him or her to break it down to the facts, figure out the neutral points that everybody agrees on. And you might not have a ton here, and you may not totally agree, and that's okay. But I want you to break it down to the facts. After you've done this, each of you gets one sentence. I want you to say to them, you are making the facts mean XYZ, and I am making the facts mean XYZ. And then they get to do the same thing. Once you've done this, I want you to then move towards talking through solutions. All right. No more talking about the problem. Instead, shift your focus on how we're going to solve for this. This allows for productivity in solving the conflict rather than perseverating and stewing in the conflict, which nobody feels good about at the end. Okay. It leaves us all feeling yucky. So that's a method that I like to use when we want to deal with conflict resolution. Number 9, as you know, whether you're in early stages of a relationship or whether you've been married for years, in any partnership, you're going to clash. You're going to have differences. You're going to think that this person that you've married is completely batshit crazy. So if you're dealing with conflict in an unhealthy way, i.e., blaming your partner, digging up old issues constantly, giving them a silent treatment, this is what is causing you to lose the intimacy and connection in the relationship. And so you get to decide if you want to make a shift, if you want to try to move towards building more connection. How many of you guys, when you're mad at your partner, you just want them to feel it? Like you are stewing in the anger and you feel like you just sitting in it and maybe shooting them ugly looks or like, you know, maybe doing silent treatment or behaving in a certain way is going to allow them to feel your anger. Like if you stew in it enough, it's going to transfer over to them. I'm here to tell you, it doesn't work that way. And I think we all know that. They don't feel the anger that we're feeling just because we are feeling in it. The only person sitting in all of that hurt and anguish is you. We can't control what our partner is thinking, and their thoughts are what are creating their feelings. So, us stewing in it, trying to throw it onto them somehow is not happening. It's not going to work. And I think this is really comical because when we talk about our husbands, and I think all of you can think of a scenario where you've been so pissed off and they're like totally clueless and moving along their day, moving along their way, completely oblivious to your emotions around a scenario or something that has happened. So this is exactly what I'm thinking about. And in these scenarios, I want you to ask yourself, what am I making this thing mean about me? What am I making it mean about our relationship? What am I making it mean about his impression or love or, relationship with me? This is super, super powerful and important. They cannot feel our anger. Lastly, the next strategy I want you to think about is the yes and thinking. When you're dealing with differences of opinion, it's really been helpful for me personally, when I start to flip to yes and. So instead of going, yeah, but, I think yes and. This shows your partner that you're open to their ideas, even if you don't completely agree. It opens the door for real conversations instead of shutting down what they're offering. And it allows for you to communicate further in a way that might be much more productive for you. All right. So those are the tips and tools that I like to use with partners and relationships. And I hope it resonated. Like I said, take what works for you. Take the pieces and parts of this that you think that you want to start to work on. And honestly, what I think you're going to find is when you start doing the work in one little area, it opens the door for you to do more and more. And this is why it's so much worth the work that we put into it, because when we show up with that awareness and the vulnerability and an open heart, it allows us to build that intimacy and connection with our partner. And ultimately, that's all we want. I remember on one of my coaching calls, one of my clients was afraid of being open and vulnerable with her husband because she had fear around what would happen. And mind you, this is the person that she and many of us have wanted to be with for the rest of our lives, to share our lives with. But there was so much fear around having that vulnerability with them. So I want to offer to you, what is that fear of vulnerability costing you now? Right? Would you rather live in this life where we don't have that connection with this person out of fear of rejection? Or would you rather want to muster up that courage and take that jump with vulnerability to create that amazing, loving, interactive connection with the person that you've chosen to be your partner in life? All right, people, I will see you or hear from you hopefully over the week, and I will talk to you next week. I might have a special guest. I might bring my little hubby on to talk about how we've kind of made some of these shifts in our relationship so you can kind of get an idea of real time how it worked. All right, you guys take care, and I will see you soon. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of From Pissed Off to Poised. Remember, transformation is a journey, not a destination. So enjoy the ride. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review From Pissed Off to Poised on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback supports my mission to get this podcast out to help other women physicians and professionals like you on their path to creating a more peaceful life with more intention and more joy. I enjoy reading every message I get with your input and feedback on my journey, so keep them coming. And if you have a friend who might enjoy the listen, please share this episode and show with them. Lastly, if you want to learn more about my coaching programs and course offerings, check out my website at www.thoughtworkmd.com. Feel free to reach out to me to learn more about investing in yourself through one-to-one coaching so you can start living the life you've always wanted. This show is for general educational and entertainment purposes only. Life coaching is not a substitute for therapy or medical treatment.